It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice right here, right now. My name is Michael Evans, and I will be your host today. Glad to be here. Appreciate the opportunity to spend my morning with you. If you're catching us live on our website, I'm glad to see you out there. There's a whole bunch of you out there this morning, including some folks up in Calgary, which that's kind of a first for, at least that I've caught. Draper, not quite sure where that is. Sioux Falls, I see Haymarket out there. Fort Walton Beach, Huntington. Let's see, there's a whole bunch of them out there. Tulsa, Oklahoma, that's nice to see you out there, Tulsa. Branson, Missouri. I see Seattle out there. I see Chicago out there. So thank you very much for joining with us live there. There's a bunch of others out there. If I skipped your city, I apologize, but if I read them all, we'd be here until, well, we'd burn up at least the first couple minutes. For those of you that are listening on Patriot FB, good morning, and thank you very much for joining with us. And for those of you that are listening on our Spreaker podcasting service, glad to have you on board. If you have a chance to, and you could hit the like button on that Spreaker podcast service, we're trying to get to a certain threshold of likes on there because it will enable us to get onto iHeartRadio and hopefully expand our audience that way. So do so if you wouldn't mind. We'd appreciate it. We're going to talk about 4 different things this morning. And, one of the things that I think a lot of folks are kind of realizing but don't really know how to voice or put the right words together for is the inflation that we're feeling right now. Irrespective of what the government's telling us, we are seeing a significant level of inflation in our country. And the reason we don't see it is because they've manipulated the way in which they do the mathematical equation to give you the inflation number. They're telling us inflation is at a controllable 4% and all that nonsense. That's malarkey. The truth is, inflation in our nation is running at 11% annually increased. And it has been since 2009. So, and you don't need me to tell you, you may not know the actual percentages or number or how you look at it, but you don't need me to tell you because all you got to do is go into the store. All you got to do is look at your gas bill. All you got to do is look at your electric bill. All you have to do is look at your natural gas bill or your propane bill, the bill to drive to work every day. All you have to do is go in and buy a pair of blue jeans, right? So this topic this morning, or this segment this morning, is going to be focused on inflation as the new normal and prepare to defend yourselves. In other words, if inflation is coming, and it is, if it's here, and it is, if it's going to get worse, and it will, what do? Well, first thing you do is you make some intelligent, articulated decisions about what you're going to do to defend yourself from that. So I'm not one of these guys that gets into buy gold and all that nonsense. I don't take any kind of sponsorships for all of that kind of thing. We're going to talk about some practical things that you can do, that you can use. All right? Second issue is Connecticut gun confiscation and a brand new bill working its way through the the state of Kansas, where they are actually, and you're not going to believe this, folks, they're going to make it a felony if you accuse a police officer of police brutality and he's found innocent. But here's the rub. He's only investigated by his own colleagues. And once that investigation is done, it's final. Nobody else can ever review it. What? Yeah. Just wait. Beyond stunning, ladies and gentlemen. This is the people in Kansas ought to be flipping out. There's over a dozen representatives in the Kansas House who have approved this thing or co-signed it, co-sponsored it, whatever. I cannot believe it. In the day, in a time when we're seeing police brutality and police stateism on the rise, when the DHS is funneling billions of dollars into local police departments, gearing them up for a national war against our own citizens, when these testosterone and roid-filled and fueled rages are going on everywhere in our streets, when police are consistently smacking the cameras out of people's hands, taking them from them, being caught on camera, abusing citizens, and openly in the public, Kansas is going to say, well, you know, if Joe gets caught beating the snot out of you, we're going to let his buddy Harry investigate him. And after Harry's done finding him innocent of the charge, no one, including a higher state police, a court, or anybody else, will be able to review the case. Really? What kind of a KGB Stasi-like thinking is that? All right. In case you hadn't picked it up, I'm a little incensed about this law. All right. Topic 3. NSA's mystic has been exposed by Snowden. Folks, this is the one that we've been talking about, but the governments keep saying, oh, we're not doing that. This is the one where they can actually monitor, track, and record the audio for every telephone call in an entire nation, and they're doing it in multiple countries right now. They won't say which ones. To make things worse, it rolls on a buffer. So basically, after the buffer gets full, it deletes the oldest and, keeps recording. It gives them up to 30 days to go back and pick up that conversation, save the entire thing or the portions that they want to take out of context and use against you, and then store it away in your personal file so that they can beat you to death with it later. Guys, I got to say, if you don't recognize at this stage in the game that capturing every phone call in multiple countries, and including our own, if you believe their assertions that they're not doing it here, you're crazy. Recording them in a 30-day buffer. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? I rest my case. Our fourth topic. The MSM, mainstream media, has now officially become the Ministry of Propaganda. We're going to talk about the fact that for over 123 days, ABC's Nightline skipped discussing the concept and whole issue of Obamacare completely. Ladies and gentlemen, how can you go for 4 months without mentioning something that is controlling 1/6 of our economy, $2.7 trillion worth of the national budget, where literally millions upon millions of Americans have lost their insurance, millions more are trying to get it and can't, and ABC's Nightline doesn't want to talk about it. You know what they talked about? Bootleg butt injections. I ain't kidding you. These people actually go down and have their butts enlarged with these injections. And that's what they're gossiping about on Nightline. Is it any wonder that the vast majority of Americans have no clue how rapidly our republic is disappearing and dissipating right in front of our face, like smoke? The truth is that the Ministry of Propaganda in this country, and that is all of the major news networks, Fox included, are busy redirecting our interest elsewhere, anywhere but at the crisis at hand. And crisis it is. We are in a constitutional crisis with a president who feels he's above the law, with a Congress who does not represent the people, and with a judiciary who has absolutely abdicated any responsibility they have as a member of the tripartite that is supposed to operate as watchdogs one against the other. Boy. Okay, let's get into our first topic before time gets away from us. Venezuela. You all know what Venezuela is. South American nation, recently under the control of Chavez, who died of cancer. Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. and taken over by Maduro, his handpicked successor. Inflation is so bad there, they can't find flour, milk, and diapers. Now, you might be able to live without bread. You may be able to live without milk. You're going to have to sweeten your coffee with honey or something. But you can't live without diapers, folks. At least not in this modern world. And at least not in my house. I mean, I'm telling you. That ain't happening. I tell you what. The problem here is that we have a world, a planet, which is starting to see the results of massive debt buildup that everyone anticipated, everyone pointed to, and not a single member of the leadership of these countries, and our own included, by the way, has taken a measure to slow down, stop, correct, nothing. I mean, you all heard the phrase when Obama was reelected in 2012. We not only, hit the iceberg with the Titanic, but in 2012 we backed the Titanic up, and then we rammed it again on purpose, right? The same can be said for every one of these fiscal conservatives who, for all intents and purposes, declare themselves to be one thing and then turn around and do the exact opposite. I mean, what rocket scientistic moron in the House thought it was a good idea to give Barack Insane Obama a blank check until 2015? March of 2015. We don't even know what the Fed and the Treasury are borrowing. You know why? Because they are refusing to turn these reports out. And the truth is, we're seeing inflation all over the place. In Cuba, they have 57% inflation, largely because their only trading partner is Venezuela. And Venezuela, you can't find cooking oil. You can't find butter, flour, diapers, milk. This one woman says, I spent all last week hunting for diapers everywhere. The situation is really tough for basic goods. Now, their crime is going through the roof because when inflation strikes, what happens? People say, I still have to have the basic necessities that I had to have before. I still need basic food to feed my family. And so these people are descending into a criminal class because they're stealing just to get the basics. The level of crime and rioting that's going on, and a lot of this is student-led demonstrations and things like that. But here's the simple end of it. We are seeing the same thing right here in the United States. And those who are unaware of it or unwilling to look at it have to recognize that we as a nation are devaluing our currency just as rapidly as they are. The only difference is that our GDP and our total economic picture is bigger, so it's taking longer for us. It's like, it's like the difference between when a child gets sick and an adult gets sick. Child gets sick, and within hours that infection has just raced through their body because they don't have the antibodies to fight back. In this case, an adult takes longer. In this case, our economy is just able to absorb this inflation better. One, because we are more economically flexible. Two, because we haven't been depressed for quite as long as Venezuela was under the leadership of Chavez. And then thirdly, our economy is bigger as an overall image, and so therefore it takes longer for the dent to actually, impact us. But our nation is devaluing our currency, and they're doing it rapidly. Make no mistake about this, folks. All you have to do is recognize that at inflation rates of 11% per year, we are in big trouble. Forget the numbers that the government is giving you. It's all a lie. What they did is they took fuel and food out of the mathematical equation. Those are the two highest costs in the average American household. fuel, and we're talking about fuel to get to work, fuel to heat your home, fuel to cool your home, and food itself. I think the government estimate is that for a family of 3, on average, even under EBT and welfare, they give you an allotment of, I think it's $600 per month for a family of 3. And at these rates, at the price of food today, that's not very much. I mean, go in and look at what ground beef cost. Right now, it's at an all-time high, by the way. But you're talking about, $3.75 a pound, all the way up to $5 and $7 a pound for chopped meat. You're kidding, right? No, I'm not. Go look at chicken, which, by the way, has now outpaced beef as the number one protein in the diet of Americans. You know why? Because American families can't afford beef. We are devaluing our currency, and we are doing it rapidly. The next currency in the United States of America is going to be food, ammo, medical supplies, and fuel sources. Forget what Bill O'Reilly tells you. Forget what these sycophants on Communist News Network, MSLSD, ABC, CBS, the Communist Broadcasting System. Forget what these people are telling you. The truth is this. Look around you, be situationally aware, and recognize what is happening around your nation. You have an opportunity now to prepare and to build up a storehouse. And if you want to take a biblical example of that, like Joseph in Egypt, who told the Pharaoh, there are 7 lean years coming, but we've got 7 years of plenty right before us. Let us take the 7 years and add to our storehouses for when the 7 lean years come. And they did. You have an opportunity now, and the things that you should be buying are basic goods that you can, 1, keep for a long time, and 2, use in the event that I'm completely wrong, just so that you can say, I hedged my bet. And at the same point in time, things that will have practical value as barter and trade, because the next currency is not going to be cash, it's not going to be gold and silver, it might be silver coin, but ultimately, the next item for currency is going to be what you can barter for what somebody else has that you want. And everything else is propaganda. They're not telling you about it, and they don't want you to know about it because they don't want you to panic. Because your panicking will accelerate the process, and they're not quite fully prepared yet, and they're certainly not prepared to have to dodge the pitchforks and the axes and the torches that are going to come their way when this whole thing comes down. Do not fool yourself into thinking this nation is not going to be hammered with an economic disaster. It will. The question is not if, it's when. So, here's what I recommend. You have an opportunity to buy bulk food. Do so. Dry goods. We're not talking about and canned goods and things like that. If you know how to can. If you don't, doesn't matter. Go out and buy cans. And we're not talking about freeze-dried food and stuff like that. I mean, there's certainly a role for that to play in your life. But it shouldn't be your sole source of food because you're going to get really sick of dehydrated eggs and bacon at some point. But having rice and beans and grains and flour and things like that put away and stored up is not a bad thing for you to do. Additionally, canned goods that are high in protein, beans, eggs, if you can buy powdered eggs, there are a lot of things that you can put away. Fish, tuna, salmon, mackerel. Mackerel's very, very cheap. Tastes like garbage. I don't like it personally. That's just me. But a lot of people do. And you can buy one of these big mackerel cans. We're talking about the size that's like a dog food can, right? You can get a can of mackerel for, 60, 89 cents. I mean, it's a big can. You may not like it, but it will keep you alive. And if you mix it with some other stuff, you won't have to taste it. It's awful. I don't like it personally. But I do love tuna and I love salmon. Now, salmon's very expensive, but it's really high in protein. Any of those types of things that you can store away and put away for the long run, those are all great ideas. Make sure that you are putting that stuff away in bulk if you can. In the meantime, if you know how to can, and you can can vegetables that you can grow in your garden and things like that, all that's great. If you can, there are good positive foods that you can eat now, including that which you can grow in your garden. You can also obtain food that will keep you healthy today before all of this comes down. And if you're going to can meat, then I would strongly encourage you to make sure that you're canning the right kind of meat. And when I say that, you need 100% organic beef if you're going to do beef. That's the most common. And what I would suggest that you do is there's a couple of places where you can get some. One is there's a couple of websites I'll give you the name of. One is heritagehills.com. The Heritage Hills. That's a friend of mine. His name is Dan Collins. It's theheritagehills.com. He has natural grass-fed beef, as does a number of other people. And by the way, some of these places will ship to you, right? So there's another website called Spring Creek Beef. Spring Creek Beef. I recently built a website for that woman. She has an excellent 100% all-organic, grass-fed and finished. No hormones, no grain, no antibiotics, none of that. This is, this is beef like it was 100 years ago. Do yourself a favor, and if you're going to can meat, then can that, right? And the truth is, at the current prices that you're paying in the local stores, you're not going to pay that much more for the better quality of the organic. The other thing that you can do is you can put away pastas, and you can put away things that are going to be high in carbohydrates and give you energy as when needed. Don't forget to put away things like sugar and honey, and don't forget to put away flour and things like that, because I got to tell you, this day of going to the store and buying what you want in a box and bringing it home and pulling it out frozen and, throwing it in the microwave or the oven is over at some point. And so you better learn how to prepare some foods that you need that you're going to utilize, to keep yourselves and your family alive. Let me tell you about the idea of ammunition and medical supplies. And we've got about a minute left, so I'm going to get cut off here. But do not ignore the issue of medical supplies. And I'm talking about just the basic antibiotics, allergy pills, any kind of prescriptions that you're on. Make sure you go to your doctor. I don't care how you finagle it. If you have to, get a second doctor. Get prescriptions that you are reliant upon. Those of you who are on diabetic prescriptions and stuff like that, you got to make sure that you got some of that kind of thing stored up and socked away for yourselves. Because if you don't, you're going to be sorry. Eyeglasses and prescriptions like that. Don't allow yourself to be caught with one pair of glasses. Because, one, they're going to break at some point. And two, I don't know. I mean, you have to use some common sense. But at the same point in time, what I'm telling you to do, none of this, and I'm going to finish this when we come back. Let me take a break here real quick, because this is a hard break. I don't have a choice on it. You're listening to America's Voice Now. You can find us at americasvoicenow.org, and you can email me at mike@americasvoicenow.org. Hang on one second. We'll be right back, and I'll finish this, and then we'll get into our next topic, which is Connecticut gun confiscation and the new bill in the Kansas House to turn it into a police state like you won't believe. Hold on. We're back. I'm not going to let the music run. I'll just let it run out in the background. But here was my point in our earlier discussion in the last segment. The goal of the idea here is that you want things that, especially in terms of medical supplies, that you're going to be able to use on a routine basis and is going to keep. But you want things, basics, bandages. You want, alcohol. You want peroxide. You want basic cleanliness, bacitracin, and by the way, don't go to the store and buy, those 10 of those little tiny bottles. Go to a local farm supply place and buy the same bacitracin that they sell you to buy a quart of it equivalent in a local drugstore is going to cost you, $80 by the time you buy 30 little bottles. The alternative is you can go to the local farm store and you can get the same thing in a quart for like $8 or $9. It's the same stuff, no difference. I'm no doctor, so don't take this as medical advice. Use your own head and don't accuse me of playing doctor. And I don't want to hear about any lawsuits. I followed your advice and my little baby got an infection in her pinky. You're an intelligent, articulate adult. Use the God-given brain that you have. The point is simply this. There's tons of information out there on the web about what you can do and how you can do it. Go to Jack Spirko's The Survival Podcast. By the way, I posted an article up this morning on America's Voice Now about an interview I did with Jack last week. And I wrote an article about it, and it's something you absolutely have to hear. But go over to his website, The Survival Podcast, and make sure that you are learning about what you need to do to be able to take care of your family with food that you grow locally and those kinds of things. Jack's got a great website out there, and I think he charges like $5 a month, and you get all kinds of background info. I mean, there's plenty you can read without joining, but if you're a member of his organization for $5 a month, you get a stunning amount of information. And then there's another one out there, the Survival Blog, and that's with James Wesley Rawls. Both of those are great. They all have, and some of this stuff is related to bug out, but a lot of it is just related to practical application. Keep stuff on hand like rope, twine, string, nails. I mean, you guys, I'm telling you, this is the barter equivalent of currency when you need it. And those who don't have it will sure be sorry, and they'll be willing to pay almost anything to get it. Lumber. I mean, the idea of having stuff like that stored away and in use will more than pay for itself. So, go to springcreekbeef.com, or go to theheritagehills.com, theheritagehills.com. Those are websites where you can get all natural, 100% organic, grass-fed, and finished beef. No grain. Grain, for the record, if you don't know anything about cows, grain kills cows. When they're ready to butcher this cow that now weighs 1,800 pounds and looks about as bloated as a tick, he's already half dead when they butcher them because they've been shoving grain down his mullet for the past, months. And that's not a natural food source for cows. They're ruminants. They don't eat grain. But it fattens them up, and that's what they're trying to do, is get all that marbled fat on there, right? And one, it raises the price of it, and two, you're willing to pay $4, $5, $6 a pound for it. And in addition to that, it makes it taste better. Well, all that's well and good, except, frankly, the cow is virtually dead on his feet before they kill him. You get grass-fed and finished beef. It's all natural. It's all organic. No hormones, no antibiotics, no additives, none of that stuff. They just, it's the same grass. It's the same beef that your great-grandparents were eating, right? TheHeritageHills.com and Spring Creek Beef. Two friends of mine, and I know both of them very, very well. So you can bank on the fact that if you buy from them, you're getting something that you can trust. All right. Kansas has recently come out with a bill that blows me away. The Kansas House has got 12 co-sponsors for a bill that will felonize you if you report an incident of police brutality or police abuse and he's found innocent of the charge. The problem is that he's found innocent of the charge by an internal investigation only. This is House Bill number 2698. I don't live in Kansas. For the record, I don't have any skin in the game. I'm just pointing out that if you live in Kansas, or you are you have a state that is trying to shove something like this down your throat, you guys ought to be in open, bold revolt. House number 2698 requires citizens to swear an affidavit before they submit a complaint against an officer. Okay? So you have to swear out an affidavit. You can't just make a complaint by phone and the chief begins to investigate and so forth and so on. You have to swear out an affidavit. Now, if any of the complaint is found to be erroneous at a later date, you can be prosecuted with a felony. I mean, this is insane. Meanwhile, he is only investigated by internal affairs. And here's the problem. It gets worse. The bill says, first of all, that no complaint will be investigated unless the affidavit is attached to the complaint, number one. Number two, the bill states that any police officer who is accused of abuse will never be questioned. Listen to this, folks. This is insane. They will never be questioned until they have read and reviewed all aspects of the complaint, including the affidavit. Now, so basically here's the deal. Let's just envision this for a moment. You say, a police officer pulled me over and he touched me inappropriately on the side of the road, right? There's video camera in the dashboard, dash cam. Your friend sitting in the car videotaped it out the back window. And you are required to fill out an affidavit that this person, touched you in an inappropriate way, made some comments, whatever the case may be, right? All right. Now the officer is given an opportunity, before he's ever even questioned, to read the affidavit and the complaint before he ever has to say what actually happened. And then on top of that, he's only going to be investigated by his own internal affairs organization. And unbelievably, if he's found innocent of the charge, the charge can never be reviewed by anyone above him, including, you can't bump it up to the state police and say, hey, the department's corrupt. I want to move this up the ladder to the state police and have somebody objective look at this. It's banned. I mean, how insane is that? It gets even worse. First of all, allowing the officer to read and see all the evidence against him before he even tells his side of the story is exactly the opposite of what they do when they're investigating you. Imagine if, just before an officer pulls you in for questioning and slams you down in the chair and handcuffs you to the table and says, we've got 3 people in the other room who witnessed you commit the crime. Imagine if they're required to give you a piece of paper that says, he's lying, we really don't have 3 witnesses against you. Really? When ever is a suspect entitled to read all the evidence and find out all the evidence against them before they're investigated, questioned, interviewed, whatever? You can't even get that from discovery when you're going to court. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, this is so over the top that the 12 co-sponsors of this in Kansas should be tarred and feathered by the Kansans. I'm telling you, this is so over the top. This is tyranny like you have no idea. When you read this bill, and I encourage you to do so, and you read this article, which will be attached to this rant, you should be so... I don't care if you're a Kansan. Every member of America should be on the phone to these Kansas co-sponsors and tearing them up. Oh, it gets worse. I haven't even told you the best parts yet. I mean, if your hair isn't standing on end and you're not foaming at the mouth and smoke isn't coming out of your ears already, it gets better. The bill mandates that every investigation that is done is permanent and final. So here's the deal. You got a police department of 20 officers. They got an internal affairs thing of one guy or 2 guys who are also serve double duty as regular officers. You accuse Officer A of inappropriate activity. He's investigated by officers X, Y, and Z. They know him. They all go to each other's houses. They all party together, have some beer on Friday night. They find him innocent of the charge, and no one can ever look at the charge above them again. Ever, ever, ever. And, by the way, now that they've found him innocent, you can be charged with a felony for an erroneous charge against a police officer. A felony. So, if one cop in the agency finds that the other cop is innocent, no agency would be allowed to review the case, even if it's a higher authority. Now, let's recognize something. In almost every police investigation, the problem is that the cops are investigating themselves and invariably find themselves innocent. And these abuse cases, almost invariably, they side with the cop. Well, situation on the ground was such that he had to make an immediate decision, of course, and he had to punch your client 816 times in the face, break 9 bones in his cheek, and, because he was in fear for his life. Of course your client could have injured him with that straw from his Coca-Cola cup. That could be a deadly weapon in the right hands, counselor. I mean, come on. Washington Post, Radley Balco. Here's what he says. He describes the bill as awful. I describe it as a little bit worse than that. Awful. He uses awful, A-W-F-U-L. I use the phrase awful, O-F-F-A-L. Right? You know what awful is? If you don't, word of the day, go look it up. Okay. O-F-F-A-L. It's what's found on the midden heap. Okay. So you're welcome to file a complaint, says Radley Balco. But the cop you're complaining about will be investigated by his colleagues, and only his colleagues. If they find that he did nothing wrong, as they nearly always do, you could be arrested for a felony. I'm sure that people file false police claims against police. I'm sure that people file false claims and complaints against police officers quite often. This bill will almost certainly discourage that, but it will almost also certainly prevent legitimate victims of police abuse from coming forward too. Now, here it gets even better. There's a website out there called Kansas Exposed, and here's what they did in response to this. They took a look at a bunch of the claims that were out there in Wichita, and out of all of the racial profiling complaints that were made, out of 100 complaints made, the police rejected 100% of them as unfounded. Hold on, this is amazing. So there were 100 complaints of racial profiling made, and all 100 were rejected as false. Really? Now, under this bill, House Bill 2698, this ought to be known as the Treason Act of Kansas, right? The Police State Treason Act of Kansas. There you go. That's what it should be called. I ought to make an anagram out of that, right? Somehow or other, Patsy ought to come out of that. Police State Tyranny Act. I mean, somebody who's good with anagrams come up with a good one. The Patsy Act. All of the people who made those complaints, 100 of them, and 100 incidents in which the police rejected those complaints as unfounded, would now be subject to criminal prosecution on a felony charge for having made the complaint. And here's the worst part. There's not a single other agency above, the hillbilly Yoakum Police Internal Affairs Division that's enabled to review the case. No one. You can't go to the Attorney General and say, Kansas Attorney General, this cop literally beat the living tar out of me with a billy club, and I got it on videotape, and his buddies found him innocent. But when you watch this tape, and you know what? The Attorney General is going to have to say, you're absolutely right. I watched the videotape, and there is no doubt in my mind that this officer abused his authority, beat you unnecessarily when your hands were cuffed behind your back, pounded your face into the dirt, but my hands are tied because our House passed a law that says we can't do anything to you or to him. Here's where it gets even better. This bill was first issued by the House Committee on Corrections and Juvenile Justice. I mean, you can't tell me it gets any dirtier than this, folks. The House Committee on Corrections and Juvenile Justice. Now, there are over a dozen representatives which sit on this committee, and they've introduced and are currently sponsoring the bill. I tried to find their names. I'm having a hard time finding it. Of course, I got so much research to do in the morning, I can't spend hours trying to figure out what these 12 traitors look like. But you can find out, and I encourage you, if you live in Kansas, to do so. And then I encourage every member in Kansas, every citizen in Kansas, to go to war against your house. You got it. Go to war. I'm telling you, any state that lets this go past, every member of the government should be permanently removed with prejudice and labeled as dishonorably discharged, tarred and feathered, and exiled from the state. Harsh, tough. Don't like it? Tough. No, I'm not inciting violence, NSA, so you can take your stupid little mystic program, because I'm already recording the conversation. We'll address you in the next segment, and you can't say that I am. Guys, you have to recognize something. The level of tyranny that is being shoved down our throats every single day now is so abusive, so egregious, so obvious, Helen Keller and Stevie Wonder can see it. Why are you pretending it's not happening? The truth of the matter is, and I got to admit, Kansas was one of the first states to pass the Second Amendment Preservation Act. What the heck is going on over there? They passed the Second Amendment Preservation Act. Their Attorney General said to Eric Holder went to him and said, "You can't override federal law. Federal law has supremacy." And their Attorney General said to him, "Oh yeah? Get out of my face. Don't come in my state. Don't come in here trying to pry guns out of our people's hands, or we'll charge you with a felony." Hip hip hooray for him. The heck are they doing with this? I mean, talk about tyranny and liberty in the same house. I mean, what the heck is going on in Kansas? Are you people insane? Who would sponsor such a thing? Who, with any good conscience, would sponsor something like this? It's so over the top. It's so ridiculous. It's so insane that anyone who would even think this up should be removed and labeled dishonorably discharged. They should have that tattooed on their forehead so they can't escape the label. A political dishonorable discharge, which exiles you from public service for life. Never again can you hold an office in the public. Never again can you have authority over anyone. I am tired of traitors, and I'm telling you, they just climbing out of the woodwork lately. All right, last but not least, this thing in Connecticut, if you're not following it, and you should be, we're still waiting for the state. The gauntlet's been thrown down. And basically, here's what it says. You either enforce these strict new gun laws and confiscate these guns, or repeal the law. The state of Connecticut is operating in open tyranny against its own citizens. And if they attempt to go in there and confiscate weapons, you've got about 250,000, by best estimates, 250,000 people who have refused to comply. By the way, in New York State yesterday, they were burning the applications in a barbecue grill in protest. That was New York State, not New York City. But here's the way you're going to have to look at this. Statistically speaking, just as a scientific observation, if 250,000 people in Connecticut have said, I'm not playing the game, and I'm not turning in my guns, and I'm not registering them with you, and I'm not telling you how many magazines I've got, and I'm not giving you a list of the unserialized magazines so you couldn't tell whether I had 1 or 100 anyway, and I'm not participating in your little tyrannical game of confiscation through registration, nor am I turning in my weapon because I failed to play your registration game. Somehow, when they try to go and confiscate the weapons from 250,000 people, statistically speaking, the odds of there not being at least one violent confrontation are practically non-existent. And when that does occur, it's not going to be a hyper misunderstanding. It's going to be the opening gambit, the shot across the bow, the shot heard round the world, the new Concord and Lexington of the Second Civil War of America. Statistically speaking, there ain't no way you're going to take away the weapons from 250,000 homes. 250,000 homes. Right? You're not going to be able to do that without inciting violence in some way, shape, or form. Some Connecticutan, or whatever they call themselves, Connecticut, whatever you are in Canada, Connecticut. I'm sorry I'm butchering your name. But whatever they call you folks in Connecticut, one of you is going to stand up and say, not today, pow! And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be a tragedy. But your government is insistent on disarming you so that you can be railroaded to your own demise. One officer is going to grab somebody's wife, abuse somebody's kid, kick in somebody's door, and they're going to say, I had no idea it was a cop, and I fired at the first 3 guys in black who came through my door. And it's going to be on. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to tackle the NSA's brand new exposed program called Mystic. This is the one where they're actually listening to every conversation, recording them all for at least a 30-day span so that they can go back and look at them at their leisure. And they're actually recording the words. It's not just metadata. We'll be right back. All right, you're listening to America's Voice Now. Please make sure that you are listening and working with our sponsors. Make sure that you see our friends over at Wits End Classic Barbershop. You can get yourself a great shave and a haircut for $10, 417-372-2027. And while you're there, you can swing into Patriot Cigar and Tobacco Shop at number 2 Court Square in West Plains, 417-257-1776. Outrageous program for coming up for spring and summer weddings. They have an opportunity for you to hold your bachelor or bachelorette party in a place like that. They also will actually bring like a cigar bar out to your wedding so that you can have, at your reception, you can have a cigar bar there as well. If you're interested in that, make sure that you give them a call, 417-257-1776. If you have a legal challenge and you need help, call Jason Henry at number 10 Court Square, 417-256-4100. 417-256-4100. Handles both state and federal cases, criminal and civil. Make sure that you see our friends over at Pizza Hut, and you can swing by there. They're on Porter Wagoner Boulevard in West Plains, and they have a great lunch special. And then Battery Station at batterystation.com, 417-257-7799.
It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans, and I am your host here this morning. Glad to have you on board with us. See those folks out there in Starkville and Mountain Home. I see Kittanning. Not quite sure where that is. Looks like it's somewhere up near western Pennsylvania. I see some folks out there in Washington State. I see some folks in California. Thank you for joining with us. We are in our third of 4 segments this morning, and we're going to talk this segment about the NSA's Mystic program, which was exposed and revealed by Snowden through the Washington Post. Guys, the hubris, the arrogance, the insane entitlement mentality of the NSA and the government in general to think and believe that they have the right to go in and listen to everyone's phone calls, every phone call recorded in a nation, period, billions of them per day, store them all, retrieve and replay them at will, is insane. There is not enough terrorism on the planet to justify that, ladies and gentlemen. I don't care what you think of Snowden. I don't care whether you think he's a hero or he's a bum. The simple truth is this. There is not enough terrorism in the world to justify this kind of creepy, sick, peeping Tomism that is being perpetrated on the planet, including the United States of America. And don't believe Liar Clapper for one moment when he tells you they're not doing it here. He is a liar and a traitor himself. Clapper, yes, head of NSA. Brennan, yes, head of CIA. The FBI is doing what the NSA is barred from doing and the CIA are barred from doing domestically. Never let anyone tell you otherwise. I may not have the Snowden docs to prove it, but I'm telling you right now, and the news is already out, I've posted plenty of articles about this, the NSA is legally prohibited from spying on Americans, right? Theoretically. With a billion exceptions out there and loopholes big enough to drive the state of Maine through. But that's not material. What is material is this. That which the NSA cannot do, the FBI is doing on their behalf. And they've got a pipe, a big, broad fiber optic connection that goes directly between Fort Meade and FBI headquarters, where it's being done for them by the FBI, who does have domestic law enforcement capabilities right here in the homeland. The truth is, if you did this to your neighbor, you'd be spending the remainder of your life in a jail at the Gray Bar Hotel. Now, there is no security, ladies and gentlemen, that is worth the changes that our society is now going through. There is no terrorism risk that justifies the complete and wholesale abuse, slaughter, shredding, crushing, and the destruction of the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution. There is nothing that warrants the ability for these peeping Toms, and that is exactly what they are, to practice this sick, perverted abuse on the American population, or anyone else for that matter. It is changing what we say, who we talk to, where we talk, how we talk, the phrases we use, the way in which we joke with each other. It's changing everything about our society. And none of it is warranted, none of it is justified. And frankly, the unintended consequences of this have terrible repercussions that we have not even yet begun to feel. We are either going to have to stop this with equal and opposite reaction, or we're going to succumb to authoritarian tyranny. What is the equal and opposite reaction? Well, for starters, it's this project that McAfee has going on with Cognizant. That's a project which he has out that will allow your NSA tracking device, the one that you bought from Verizon, yes. The one that you bought from Lees and T, right, that one. The one you got from Sprint, the one you got from U.S. Cellular or any other carrier out there. It allows that to be used anonymously. It's just about to be released. I believe it's supposed to be released on Friday. It's called Cognizant. Cognizant. Now, that's an app for Android phones. But he's also been working on another project which will allow your, it's called Decentral. And it's a gadget basically that runs about $100 that will enable us to bypass the traditional internet so that everybody's phone or device becomes kind of a node on the network. Now, I got to tell you, folks, I am incensed that after all these months, we have not seen a veritable avalanche of privacy projects and products out there. Where are they all? Where is all of the products that all the brilliant minds in America could come up with? Where are they? Is there some issue going on where they're being blocked from being distributed or being announced or produced or manufactured or created? I don't know. I don't want to sound like, I'm paranoid or something, but I am going to tell you this. I can't think of one other incident, one other issue that would have not generated some level of ingenuity from the inventors in the United States of America. There's some brilliant software programmers out there. There are brilliant engineers and technicians and gadget makers. Where the heck are they all? Why don't we have devices that will enable us to secure ourselves from an overbearing tyrant? Don't tell me that you're siding with them because you're afraid of terrorism. The reason I make the obvious point is that you have about a mathematical equivalent chance of being killed in a terrorist attack as you do of winning the lottery. I mean, the whole big, $400 million jackpot kind of lottery. The odds of you dying in a some sort of a terrorist attack are staggeringly high. The truth is, our nation is living in fear based on a media which fills your mind with false ideas and false choices, a government which openly and blatantly lies to you. Why would you believe Clapper is not doing this domestically here in the United States, or that the FBI is not doing this here in the United States, when we've seen them stand up and in front of Congress lie right to their faces, lie to our faces, time and time and time and time and time and time again. Just in the last, year? I mean, who would believe these people? How can you possibly give them anything that they say credence? You can't. And that's exactly my point. The equal and opposite reaction has to be solutions which enable us to have our privacy back and make it, there's just no way that you can make all communication secure. But what you can do is stick so many, I'll draw this analogy for you. You can put so many popsicle sticks in between the spokes that eventually the tire won't spin anymore. No, you can't stop the bicycle with a single popsicle stick. But thousands of popsicle sticks will drag the bicycle to a halt. The idea of extensive and widespread use of security software and encryption methods will essentially drag the NSA's program to a screeching halt because they don't have the computing power to break all that encryption. Now, you can't use standard off-the-shelf stuff because they've already either bribed, coerced, or held at gunpoint the companies, the manufacturers, and the creators of that software to give them backdoor keys. But now that everybody's aware of what's going on, there's absolutely no reason why we cannot have some creative people. I mean, where are all these guys in Anonymous? Where are you all? I mean, if you're Legion and we should all be looking out for you, why aren't you doing something for the good of mankind and coming up with a piece of software that you can freely distribute through open source and say, here, instead of going in and hacking and stealing people's credit cards and all of that nonsense, where are all the great criminal minds? I mean, ultimately, it would be self-serving because law enforcement couldn't find you either. But in the meantime, hundreds of millions of us would be saved from a tyrannical government completely out of control. The truth is, I don't know where it's going to come from. I don't know who's going to write it. I don't know who's going to create the software packaging. I don't know who's going to implement. And it has to be simple enough where where it's automatic. Because most people don't have the technical skill to install high security packages and encryption software and, figure out how to go through various different systems and the things you hear about Tor and all the rest of that. Not for nothing, but I believe Tor is a honeypot. In other words, it's a trap. They've already hacked Tor. So if you think you're, skirting around their watchful eyes using Tor, I think you're fooling yourself. And they would just as soon you did. Because now you think you're operating securely, and you're not. The truth is, we need something that's open source and is so simple to use that when you boot your machine, it's automatic. And it operates, and it runs, period. End of argument. But I can tell you this. What they're doing is beyond criminal. It's a crime against humanity. It is a crime of such a great proportion that it makes the crimes that are conducted every day by government look small in comparison. Because the end result of them gathering every phone call made on the planet is only to be used for your detriment and your ultimate demise. I don't care who you are. I can sit there and capture your telephone calls and creatively wordsmith a story out of taking things out of context that would make 25 phone calls to your grandmother look like you were plotting some kind of a insane national tragedy. And if you don't think they're capable of that, I don't know why you have blinders on. Look at the people you're dealing with. These people are not the dogs of war. These people are even worse than the dogs of war. They are evil in a way that is difficult to actually point to and comprehend. The simple truth is, what they're doing is a crime against humanity. Not just here in the United States, not just here in our land, across the planet. I'm not saying that there's not terrorists out there. There are. And I don't even want to get into why there's terrorists out there and whether or not, we're kind of creating our own reality here by sticking our nose in everybody else's business. When what we really ought to be is focusing on ours. I mean, our country's coming apart at the seams. We've got inflation, we've got unemployment, we've got a president out of control, a Congress out of control, we've got a court system that acts as if they don't want to play ball at all and they're just going to sit there like a little wallflower in the corner of the elementary school dance. The whole country's coming apart like a cheap Chinese suit in the rain. You got industry out there scamming and beating the snot out of citizens, trying to scrabble that last dollar out of them, squeezing and turning and twisting the stone to try to grab the last few remnants of pennies that they can shake out of their pockets before an economic collapse comes down that will leave all of us bereft of everything. You've got tyrants and traitors like the CIA, the NSA, the FBI, the DHS. These people are so insane, they don't even operate within government law. Their masters don't even know what kind of web they're weaving. And then when they find out, they give them cover. Ladies and gentlemen, this is crazy. And it's worse than crazy. It's downright flippin' dangerous. The truth is, Snowden came out the other day, and he made some very, very interesting revelations. Not just related to this mystic, but, part of it. He came out at a TED gathering, which is kind of an industry trade group, and he had an Android where he was coming in over a satellite feed or something, and he said there are absolutely more revelations to come. Some of the most important reporting to be done is yet to come. Holy smoke! I mean, how much more insane can we get than an NSA, which is capturing the content, the metadata, and the actual audio phone call of every call made in a country on a 30-day span and constantly rolling it over in a buffer? You've got to be flipping kidding me. The Stasi, the KGB, they have erections over these kind of wet dreams. The truth is, ladies and gentlemen, I don't care whether you paint this guy as a hero, a patriot, or a traitor. What he's done has exposed the absolute evil that is being perpetrated on you and me and your children. This is changing everything about us. It is changing the way in which we communicate. It is changing the way our media. Where is our investigative journalism? Where is our adversarial press? They're not adversaries now. They're married. They're married to government. And they are working together with government against you. There's no terrorism that justifies this, ladies and gentlemen. There is none. And I got to tell you, this ain't an issue that is a Republican issue, a Democrat issue, a red state, blue state, progressive, liberal, conservative issue. This is an American issue. And it's a crime against our nation. Snowden is calling for a Magna Carta. I'm calling for something even more than that. I mean, I'm calling for a complete dishonorable discharge of every member that's guilty of this treason. And treason it is. Make no mistake about it. What they are doing in the capturing of this data is treason. They're calling Snowden a traitor. Sorry, folks. This is no different than the bully who gets up off the pummeled kid on the ground and said, he just kept hitting my fist with his face. The truth is, every member of this government, from the very top to the very bottom, thousands of administrative agencies that are operating outside of constitutional authority. Every group, every member, every employee dishonorably discharged. Will it wreak havoc? Heck yes. Must it? Absolutely. There is no salvage of the rest of this. You can sit there and vote in 2014, and you can try to vote in 2016. Let me tell you something. The end result is not going to change, and I'll tell you why. They have no intention of allowing it to change. It's not meant to change. They don't want it to change. And you're not going to get it to change. We thought that in 2012. We thought that in 2010. We thought that in 2008. We thought it in 06. We thought it in 04. We thought it in 22. And we thought it in 2000. Wake up and smell the coffee. You can continue to play this game as if tomorrow it's going to get better. And it has progressively gotten infinitely worse. If he's telling us, Snowden, that this is only the tip of the iceberg, and that some of the most important reporting to be done is yet to come, what does that tell you? It tells you that we have only barely scratched the surface of the treason that is being perpetrated upon us. Treason is what it is, ladies and gentlemen. You can throw out any fancy euphemism you want, but it doesn't change it from what it is. We're going to take a break. When we return, we're going to talk about how the mainstream media is now officially the Ministry of Propaganda, and how they, along with government, are working hand in hand, colluding together to ruin this nation from the inside, to rot it like corruption. We'll be back in just a minute. If you have an opportunity to, please make sure that you visit our sponsors, including the Battery Station in West Plains. Kevin is a great friend of mine and has an outstanding location there. He's got anything and everything you could want for preparedness, emergencies, survival, as well as everyday products like flashlights and batteries and everyday things that you need. Knapsacks and sleeping bags, and my goodness, you can get Spring Creek beef right there. He's got a freezer that they keep right there. So when you're in there, you can actually buy 100% natural grass-fed and finished beef right in his place. He's also a great man and a great family, and they are true patriots. Please, I encourage you and I implore you to work with them, either online, because they ship all over the country. They're one of the largest battery and flashlight distributors in the country. Or you can go in person. You can go to their website at batterystation.com, batterystation.com. You can also call them at 417-257-7799, 417-257-7799. Make sure that you swing into Pizza Hut as well, where you can get an outstanding lunch buffet every day. Tuesdays and Thursdays are reduced price, and on Tuesday night, kids under 12 eat free on family night. The law offices of Jason Henry at 417-256-4100, state and federal criminal and civil. Make sure that you give him a call. Wits End Classic Barbershop for a great haircut and Patriot Cigar and Tobacco. We'll be back in just a moment. Back. I am glad that you guys are with us this morning. We're covering important stuff here. And I think it's important that Americans understand just how deeply betrayed we have been. We covered inflation and how it's the new normal, and that you should be actively working to prepare yourselves and your families for a coming economic crush. I just did an interview, and I just posted it up on americasvoicenow.org with Jack Spirko from the Survival podcast. And you can get to Jack's website at thesurvivalpodcast.com. Now, Jack is a well-known, well-respected man, and he doesn't normally do he's no Alex Jones or anything like that. He normally deals with preparedness and things like that, where he's talking about, how you can be responsible for yourself and your family and your own well-being. Water, food, how you can, build yourself a shelter that would, and make your home energy efficient so that you can heat with wood or what have you, if normal supplies, or even just effectively become efficient enough where you can, take care of yourself and not have to worry so much about, going out and getting natural gas or oil or whatever the case may be. We talked about in this interview, and I want to be I'm not going to spoil it, but we talked about during the course of that about what they're doing and what the government is doing to manipulate you into buying government bonds through your retirement account, and you don't even know you're doing it. And it's kind of the My IRA on stealth steroids in the 401k retirement fund industry. So I strongly encourage you to get to americasvoicenow.org. And right at the top, in that slider, the image rotation, the first thing you click on is the first one that comes up will be the interview with Jack. Please take a minute to read the article. I kept it as short and sweet as possible just to lay the groundwork for it. And then please take the time to watch the video. Go to Jack's website and make sure that you're educating yourself. But part of the issue is that the media is not educating us about what is happening. I mean, Jack's right. Why hasn't the media talked at all about the fact that the cash option is gone from your 401k, and you can only now put money in short-term government bond funds? Huh? Since when? It's your money. Why can't you throw it into cash and just let it sit there? Even if it is going to be inflationarily stripped. That's your prerogative. It's your money. The media should be exposing this, but they're not. The media should be exposing what's going on here with Snowden. And they had inklings of it long before Snowden came out, but they kept their lips zipped. The media has sat here and sycophantically supported this president in the most heinous tyranny that the United States has ever experienced in our 240-year history. I'm going to give you an example. ABC, Nightline News, watched by millions of Americans. ABC, right? I mean, if you don't have cable or satellite, maybe the only television you get. They did not discuss or use the word Obamacare for 123 days. Now, that's unconscionable. That would be like going to church and not having your minister mention the Bible for 4 months on end. You'd be like, why am I coming here? I mean, really. That would be like your child going to school and no discussion be had about history, math, science. What is it that you're spending all that time on then? Well, in ABC Nightline's case, they gossip about all kinds of things. Fashion, social issues, gay and lesbian issues, the changing societal issues. But they also talk about things like bootleg butt injections. Of course, this is highly critical and important to the nation because we all need to know if we should or shouldn't get a bootleg butt injection. I mean, That's really important to the overall American economy. That's important to whether or not their introduction is get a bootleg butt injection because it's never big enough. They sent one of their journalists, alleged journalists, to Caracas, Venezuela. And what did that trip cost? Well, they sent that journalist to Caracas to say, we're looking for a doctor who runs a backroom butt clinic out of his apartment. That's their intent. That's their interpretation of investigative journalism. The truth is, all the investigative journalism they need to do is based right in Washington, D.C. Any news organization that can ever figure out how to hire a small army of reporters and get them injected into the inside Washington mainstream, you will have groundbreaking issues that you can get the highest internet ratings possible. Because America does care about it. But, they can't care about it if they don't know where to find it. They can't care about it if they're constantly being told it doesn't matter. Or that they're being misled and misdirected in a completely different direction. They spent 9 minutes and 33 seconds on bootleg butt injections. And not one sound, not 1 second on Obamacare. Something that's affecting $2.7 trillion of our taxpayer money. Something that's affecting 1/6 of our economy. Something that is affecting, at this point, already 7 million Americans have lost their insurance policies. 46 million, according to the president, which I doubt, 42, I apologize. 42 million, according to the president, didn't have insurance in the first place. And now he's only signed up 5 million, and 7 million have lost their insurance. So we're 2 million in the hole. And they don't want to mention it. They don't want to discuss it. They don't even want to mention the name Obamacare. When you look at the news today, the vast majority of what they give you is propaganda. It is designed and geared to do one thing: to lead your mind down the path opposite of critical thinking, opposite of intelligent, articulate discussion about the true nature of what is happening around us in our country. Their job is not to be entertainment. We've got Hollywood for that. Their job is not to make the nightly news into a sitcom. We've got plenty of studios that make that and pump that kind of trash out in high volume. Their job is not to keep you entertained. Their job is to educate and inform you. And frankly, I am tired of news organizations that, for all intents and purposes, look down their nose at actors and then do the same exact thing. There's no investigative journalism going on in this country right now. None. Not even from your beloved Fox News. Murdoch and Ailes have that whole thing sewn up, and they've got you sitting there drinking the Kool-Aid saying, yeah, that Fox News, boy, they're fighting for us. Fighting for you? Like heck. Why aren't they mentioning Common Core? Why are they calling Snowden a traitor? Why? That comes out of every commentator's mouth on Fox News. Every single one without fail. None of them have stood up and said, I don't believe he's a traitor. None of them. Listen to them. You got a Bill O'Reilly, who's the most influential commentator, whatever you want to call it, host in the country, bar none. Nobody has the ratings he has. Nobody in any organization, in any news organization. Not CNN, not Fox, not MSNBC, not CBS, ABC, none of them. He dominates it. He sat there and not so long ago said, for those people that are telling you that we are going to have a collapse and descend into martial law, don't believe that. Really? Hey, Bill, I don't know who gave you a crystal ball, or I don't know who is threatening you or paying you or corrupting you to speak that way. But I also know that you're right. You do make a lot of money, and you are living in a bubble of O'Reillyville that is not the real world, Bill. The truth of the matter is, ladies and gentlemen, Fox News is owned by Murdoch and Ailes. They also own the Wall Street Journal, the other most influential newspaper in the country. And even though they would sit there and pretend that they're at war with the New York Times and the MSLSDs of the world, the simple truth is this. They're controlled opposition. They are there for the same reason that there is a Republican and a Democrat Party, to give you the illusion of choice, to give you the impression that you have a choice, to give you the illusion, the chimera, that somebody's on your side. What they're really doing is lifting off the top of your head, inserting a funnel, and pouring in the hot liquid of indoctrination. That's all they're doing. Nothing more. And every once in a while, they get caught off on a side story, like this stupid airplane thing. I mean, I'm not, how that has dominated the media is beyond my comprehension. I mean, I get it. It's important. But for it to be 24/7, 365, I mean, it's just insane. There are things happening in our own country, not just in the world, but right here in our country, that are absolute abuses of everything that our country is built upon. We are descending into a fascist dictatorship, and nobody's telling you. Not even Fox. Not even Rush. Not even Mark. Sometimes not even Beck. I get it. They've got ratings to protect. They've got families to protect. Who knows? I certainly don't know what it's like at that level. Maybe you have a visit from somebody who says to you, if you continue down this path, we know how your daughter gets to school every morning. I don't know. But I do know this. I wouldn't put that past this government. I wouldn't put that past these people in power to protect it at the cost of the life of a child, if they felt that that was necessary to shut someone up. Our media is supposed to be a watchdog of the watchdogs. We have a three-party system which is supposed to operate like a triangle, interconnected and overseeing each other so that we are defended and protected from one of the three trident branches going awry, running amok, going rogue. The problem is that all three have gone rogue. I had a discussion with an attorney the other day, and he was trying to argue with me about the fact that the courts don't have power because they can make a claim and they can state that the government has to do this or do that, but they don't have any way to enforce it. They don't have an army to back it up. And I disagreed with him. I said that's not true. The truth is that the court has willingly taken a back seat, like a shy wallflower at the elementary school dance, and they don't want to make a decision. They keep saying, hey, that's between you guys and the executive and the legislative. We're not going to get involved in that. You guys hash it out yourselves. Well, go read the founders' documents and see if that's what their intention was. No, the executive was supposed to watch the judicial and the legislative. The legislative was supposed to make sure that the judicial was operating correctly and the executive was, and vice versa. I mean, the whole point was each individual was supposed to watch the other two. And then the media is supposed to stand back and observe all three and express to you when any one of those three drops the ball. So we don't just have a complete and utter abdication of the principles of the rule of law and the constitutional ideas of ethics and honor and integrity in government. We have it even in government and the media. I mean, what is the price all these people are getting? What are they getting paid? I mean, how are they getting paid? Who's doing the threatening? If your response is, well, see, maybe it's not happening and you're just a conspiracy theorist, then I invite you to take a look at the headlines that are sprouting up everywhere all day. And then read between the lines and figure out what they are really saying or not saying, or how they're misleading you and misdirecting you. But you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure it out. There is so much alternative media out there that is not captivated by the 6 major corporations that own everything, that if you're unwilling to see it, it's because you're trying desperately hard not to see it. Don't tell me I'm a conspiracy theorist. I'm telling you that you're part of the conspiracy, even if it's unwittingly, because you refuse to see that which is right in front of your face. And the real reason that you don't see it is not that you don't see it, it's you don't want to acknowledge it, because to acknowledge it means that you have to get out of your comfy little circle. You have to get out of your little happy box. You have to get off your duff. You've got to actually pick up the phone. You've got to take the risk. And you're not willing to. And for all your protestations to the contrary, you don't truly care about the livelihood and the success of your children, your neighbors, your friends, your family, and future generations. Because by the time the stuff gets to the stage where bloods are flowing in the streets or people are being imprisoned in your own community, it's going to be vastly too late. The truth is that every media organization out there, and I'm talking mainstream now, there are 6 major organizations out there. And all of them are completely abdicating any level of accountability to our nation. They are all interconnected. They are basically so deeply ingrained and own so much of the media. There was a There was an article recently, I just pulled it up here. There's an infographic out there about it, but there's basically this article out there, and I'll have to find it for you, and I'll see if I can include it in the body of this or somewhere up on the website or the Facebook page. But it is basically a infographic that shows you who the 6 media corporations are and that they own 90%. 90%, folks, of the media that's out there. I mean, that's insane. GE. Now, first of all, GE, let's understand who GE is, right? A multinational who doesn't pay any tax in the United States. In fact, GE has not paid any taxes in the United States in years. None. And they own Comcast, NBC, Universal Pictures, and Focus Features. News Corp, the parent company of Fox, Wall Street Journal, and the New York Post. Disney, who owns ABC, ESPN, Pixar, Miramax, and Marvel Studios. Viacom, who owns MTV, Nick Jr., BET, CMT, that's the comedy channel, or country music channel, excuse me, and Paramount Pictures. Warner Brothers, Time Warner, who owns CNN, HBO, Time, and Warner Brothers. And CBS, who owns Showtime, the Smithsonian Channel, NFL.com, Jeopardy, and 60 Minutes. There are 232 media executives who control the information that is seen by 275 million Americans. That's one media executive for every 850,000 subscribers. That basically is like the House of Representatives. You know what their revenue was for the year 2010? Collectively? $275 billion. 275, actually 276. 275.9. So I'm just going to round up. $276 billion. That's 5 times the bailout of General Motors. That's enough to buy every NFL team in the country 12 times over. And it's $36 billion more than the entire gross domestic product of Finland. The truth is, they control 70% of all that you see on cable and all that you see on television. And they control 90% of what you get in media, whether it be television or print. And it's only getting worse. It's only getting worse. So the simple truth is this. When you look at, and I'm not going to leave radio out of this because I got 1 minute left, but I'm just going to throw this out there. There are Clear Channel, which is one of the largest radio organizations out there, owns 1,200 stations. And in some places, they own all the stations, like Minot, North Dakota. You say, well, what the heck is that? Well, why would they care to own all the stations? %, of all the radio stations in the country, their playlists match. In other words, they're playing the same stuff in 80% of all the stations. So the simple truth is this. They merge and they buy and sell each other. But basically, you've got 6 corporations that control 90% of all the media in the United States of America. And ladies and gentlemen, if you want to know where the fault lies in why you are not educated about what's going on in our nation, that's it. Thomas Jefferson said to us, I know of no safe depository for the ultimate powers of the society but the people themselves. And if we think them not enlightened enough to exercise control with a wholesome discretion, the remedy is not to take it away from them, but to inform their discretion by education. This is the true corrective of abuse of constitutional power. But nobody's listening. Contact me at Mike at americasvoicenow.org. You can visit our website at americasvoicenow.org. nsa.org. Have a great day.